did make it on time. I didn't walk in late.
We're indeed honored to have you here. So, thank you for serving our country. Thank you for everything you do for Louisiana.
Thank you, sir. And I'm ready to go. Stop right here. I'd like to certainly thank the Sierra Club for this opportunity to speak tonight, but also for what the Sierra Club does for Louisiana and our nation. How about a big round of applause for the Sierra Club? Not here tonight is Woody. Woody goes on this sabbatical every year. I think he might be in Colorado. He goes somewhere in the mountains, so I don't know what Woody's doing out there. So he's someplace where he's very happy. But he works hard, and he and his team here are a key part of our nation's response, our citizens' response to deal with the challenge we have for clean air, clean water, safe land, and our health. And that's why I'm here tonight to tell you what we've done collectively with the Green Army. And you say, well, who is the Green Army? Is anybody who want to be a part of it? I'm sorry?
Maybe yes.
Yeah, maybe you.
Yeah. Anybody want to be a part of it? It's about
volunteer army.
Fighting for clean air, clean water, and safe land, and protecting our health. We meet every Friday morning on conference call. We have no dues. We're about purpose. And the purpose is to protect our air, our land, our water, and our health. And we got started because of Bayou Corn. Some of you heard of Bayou Corn. Down in Assumption Parish, where a sinkhole happened. This company out of Texas came. They put a permit in. The state allowed them to execute the permit. The state told them the permit was in danger. They drilled anyhow. They made a hole in the ground in the side of a salt dome that's 1 by 3 miles. The salt dome collapsed. The salt dome collapsed. The hole is now 40 acres. Changing what God created, what nature created over thousands and thousands of years. They live in a gated subdivision outside of Dallas. They have less than 12 people work here, and they've changed our ecology forever. It threatens Bayou Corn and threatens Lake Verret. And one day, you will see one of these presidents talking about the further collapse of that dome on the White House lawn. I don't know which president of it, but you're going to see it happen. The sad thing is, just 4 years earlier, we lost Grand Bayou, which was just about 3 miles up the road from Bayou Corn. The people there asked me to get involved. I was sitting around minding my own business, doing public speaking and writing books, which I've written a couple of them, and the third one's on the way. And they said, they're not paying attention, General. Maybe your voice will help us. And I went to Bayou Corn and met with the citizens, and within a couple months, we had a big press conference in Baton Rouge. We got the international press in there, got some pressure on the state government. It took the governor over a year to go visit. Our governor at the time was running for president. He took a $60,000 donation from the parent company. All that done in public, everybody sees it. Nobody says nothing. Our legislature has allowed these companies to come in and hijack our democracy. We all love oil, we all love gas, because that's what we use to transport with. Until we get something else, that's how you got here tonight, most likely, unless you got a Tesla. and you recharge it based on solar panels. And in Louisiana, that's hard to do because you can't buy one here. We passed the law. That's how backwards we are when it comes to looking at the future and how we're going to sustain ourselves with clean air, clean water, and energy. Thank you very much. Going into fighting Bayou Corn, that was 2013 and 14. We went to the legislature. We've been in the legislature 3 years now with a bill dealing with Bayou Corn. We got that bill through the legislation, which basically said if we have to displace a community, then the company have to pay the people fair market value. That didn't happen in Bayou Corn. It didn't happen with the entire Louisiana legislature sitting there with ability to do something about it. It didn't happen there with a governor that we elected. It didn't happen with a state attorney general sitting there watching in plain daylight. It didn't happen with a parish government. The parish government didn't even know how much chlorine Texas brine had stored in the cave. They had to go to Houston because the state couldn't tell them. Because the DNR and the DEQ don't monitor these companies. They allow them to self-report. They went to Texas, got a company from Houston to tell them. From that, the parish figured out that the company owed them several $1 million in parish tax. The company countersued and said, as long as that stuff in the ground, it has no value. They weren't paying tax on the stored product in that salt dome. So these are things cause us to get legislatively active. Because you can complain all day long, you can march, you can protest, but until you change the law, it doesn't matter. So that first law we changed is in the event somebody had to move and a company forced you to move because of an accident they had to pay you fair market value, because the people in Bayou Corn didn't get replacement value. They got current value for their home, which was a shame. You know what? That company is not bankrupt and is still operating today. And they're still living in a gated community in Texas with less than 17 people working in Louisiana, and they destroyed a major part of our topography that will no longer be available for our people. And that's what this multi-state company in this case did to us. The first bill I'd like to talk about that we introduced this year, and when we get to question and answers, I've been asked to speak for about 30 minutes. Make sure somebody asks me about Section 16 land.
Okay.
See the first question. The first bill we spoke about was Bill 689. Social media is a weapon for us. I know a lot of people are reluctant to use social media. The Pope used it. Of course, our president used it.
Thank God.
But it relates to the fact that you think you hear the advertisement on TV, if the tree fell and nobody heard it, did it make a sound? If we're here and we're talking about saving our air and our water and we don't speak about it, did the event ever happen? So I'm encouraging you to use social media. Encourage you to post tonight. The first 5 people that post something from what I said tonight while we were sitting here, I got free books for you. Is that a deal? Okay. You got it. But you have to have my name and you have to have the location of where we are. Is that a deal? Facebook or Twitter?
Got it.
And I'll pass these books on. I mean, MacArthur said people are motivated by 2 things, greed and self-interest. So be a part of that team. Don't fight social media, get on it. Because there's a lot of part of the legislation think we're a lot bigger than what we are because of our space on social media. Because we tell the people what they're doing. And they don't like that. Because last year the lobbyists in this state spent over $3,300 on every legislator, taking them to Ruth's Chris, Galatoire's, Saints games, LSU games, Southern game, Louisiana Tech game, fishing and hunting. $3,300. How many of you were able to write a check to each of your legislature that represents you? Our democracy has been hijacked by multinational corporations. There's no reason why we are the 2nd largest energy producer in America. We only have 4.6 million people, and we're the 2nd poorest state. Something don't add up. Our democracy has been hijacked. The majority of our legislature are attorneys, or people who work in the oil and gas industry, who, because we elect them to office, get to come to the state capitol 3 months out of the year and make laws that help their business. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's not what our ancestors fought for during the American Revolution. That's not the democracy we fought for. But this is the democracy we have today. First bill was 689. Actually, this bill was HB 533, and it dealt with two companies, Exxon and Georgia Pacific, in Baton Rouge, drawing water off of the Southern Hill Aquifer. Mr. Hayes Town had done a study about 10 years ago. We created the Green Army. We pulled them in and said, we got to save our water, because if not, within a matter of a couple of decades, the people in Baton Rouge could be drinking water out of the Mississippi River. Because the saltwater intrusion coming in from the Gulf, which is swallowed up Iberville Parish and all the southern parishes. All of you remember when you used to go to Plaquemine, you'd go to New Iberia, people had wells in their backyard. Remember that? That no longer exists because the shallow aquifers have been destroyed because of the oil and gas industry. For every gallon of gas, it takes 8 gallons of water. Write it down. And that water is no longer ever available for us to use again. We think it's polluted for at least 100 years. That's what happened to our shallow aquifers. And when we sucked them dry during the exploration business, the saltwater intrusion started to happen. Some people call this climate change. This is not climate change, this is outright pollution. It is pollution. And it affects the climate, it affects where we live, it affects where we fish, it affects where we can get our water from, but it's outright pollution. So as they continue to take the water, and in Baton Rouge right now, the Southern Hill Aquifer, as the fresh water that comes out of Mississippi goes down, the saltwater intrusion is moving in. The saltwater is crossed the Mississippi River in Baton Rouge by LSU, crossed the city park, and is now intruding into places like Choctaw. That's how far that salt water's gotten. In 1970, the governor of Louisiana created a commission. In 1973, the commission said, we're going to do exploration wells to figure out what happened. Last week, on 3rd of July, I went to a meeting with the commission. They said they're going to build exploration wells to figure out what's happening. That's how far we've gotten since 1970s. And those two companies still drawing water, 66 million gallons of water a day out of the aquifer, equal to what 5 people in 5 parishes use. We presented that bill, Representative Bishop, right out of Lafayette here, kind of was a little rude with us. And he told us our bill didn't meet the standards and that it was a local bill. We assured him it wasn't a local bill, and he dismissed us. He dismissed us like we were second-class citizens. And I was walking away from the table. I said, you're going to be sorry we did this today, but you're going to cause the governors of this state to change. You're going to be sorry you did it. And that irritated him. And I walked over and spoke to the DEQ, who had just spoken against us on the bill. And I said, you're going to be sorry you did this today. And a reporter heard it. And 3 days later, he wrote a email, Jeremy Alpha said, the journal was smoking hot. 2 days later, I went to Newport, California, to issue a speech. I flew back in. When I arrived in Atlanta on transition to the flight in New Orleans, I got an email the governor wanted to see me. I went to see him, and miraculously the next morning, another bill was introduced to do the same thing we did. They changed the number, and Representative Bishop approved that bill in less than 10 minutes. That's the power of the people. Give yourselves a hand. But you know what? It's all about you. How this is going to read in Lafayette that I'm fighting for Exxon and Georgia Pacific and these people's water is at risk. He knows. His parents come out of Honoré. He drank brown water all his life. He told me. Y'all know him. When you see him on the street, go pat him on the back and thank thank him for saving our water, because we're going back next year with another bill about water. And we got to get it through his committee. The next bill we passed was HB 394. We actually didn't pass this bill, but we came close and we exposed the DEQ for what he is, a representative of the Louisiana Chemical Association. If you've ever heard of a fence line community, imagine the plants right here. In Louisiana, we can have inside of 500 feet, with exceptions and exemptions to the Clean Air Act. I'll pass this around, you can see it. But the plant, IMT is right here. Shell is right there. Shell is a company out of Holland. And right here is a community of people that will form after the Emancipation Proclamation. Look at this. Tell me if you want to live next to that. 3 years ago, we had major chemical release. The plant was closed for a period of time. People went to the hospital. And we said, we need a mandatory air monitoring bill in Louisiana. We have over 530 plants that meets 77 or Title V requirements for review by the EPA. 530 plants. We're not Arkansas. We are called the Chemical Corridor. It was named that under the Obama administration as somewhat of a way to introduce more companies to come here and build chemical plants. Hello. To improve the economy. We call it Cancer Alley. In Washington, they call it the Chemical Corridor. As you run along Interstate 10 and on into that part of Beaumont, Texas. Over 530 plants. When those plants have an accident, and accidents do happen, and that gas affects people and people have to go to the hospital, yeah, it only happened one time, but we need to be able to monitor those people, and we need to be able to monitor that community to make sure it's not happening again. It's like getting your car fixed, right? Do they always fix it right the first time? You know what I'm saying? Same thing with these big plants. Well, that's what we wanted. Secretary Brown said no. He had the authority to do that, so we killed this bill. And again, I told him that day, he's going to be sorry he did that. And as a result of that, 10 days later, Secretary Brown was standing in St. Rose. Standing in St. Rose, had never visited before, and told the people there would be air monitoring installed. Give yourself a hand. These companies play dirty. Shell from Holland. When the time the incident happened, I met twice with the Shell representative, the IMT rep, and the local people. And a couple months later, I went to a board I was sitting on in Atlanta, and they said, "General, we got a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, Shell said they're concerned about you down there helping the people." And at the time, the company board I was sitting on had a pending contract with Shell. So you know what happened. I had to walk from that board. That's what Shell is. It's a multinational corporation from Holland. I spent 3 years in Holland protecting them from the Red Army. Okay? They can come to America and dictate policy. That next year, Shell put their name on the New Orleans Jazz Fest just to make it taste good. Go see the people in St. Rose and see their health, see what they... Some homes, up to 3 people in the home all have upper respiratory. What is the state government doing about it? Nothing. Secretary Brown went there and he put the air monitors in. He says it's going to take a year to get results. But we're watching them. The next bill we have is 167 by Senator Barrow. This bill was designed to be able to do health monitoring. You know, like this place you have here in Lafayette where they used to service the old trains? And people live around there? If you go to those houses, you're going to find a lot of cancer in those houses. We wanted to be able for the state to declare that area an area of health monitoring and charge the company who ran that place to pay for it. We got no cooperation from the Louisiana Department of Public Health. We got opposition from the LSU tumor registry. Why? Because they take money from the LCA, the Louisiana Chemical Association. Hello. Our government's been hijacked. We did end up with a study that's supposed to be completed. It's called a House resolution that determines some protocols, and next year we're going back with this as a bill again. Y'all agree we ought to do that? Yes. Because in these known areas, we ought to know. We ought to know. The next bill we ran hard with the help of Katrina Jackson, very aggressive legislature, they tried to kill this bill hard. This bill dealt with the tumor registry. How many of you heard of the tumor registry? Sound pretty cool, right? We got an organization that monitors the tumors in the state. The problem is the tumor registry has been hijacked. They put it inside LSU, which is problematic because it's a university, of course, and the second thing is they have to follow different laws. In a university, a professor can do research all day long, but once he starts publishing that research, who owns that research? University. You with me? And that's the way it's set up in Louisiana. It's not set up like that in Georgia. But we penalize our professors here for the intellectual creativity. And what the tumor registry is hiding behind is the HIPAA Act. How many of you are familiar with HIPAA? It's the privacy of your personal information. It's created after AIDS came out and people wanted to get jobs and they wanted to play basketball and all that, so we created this law. But they hide behind HIPAA and says, we will not tell you the level of cancer in a community because we don't want to violate the people who live there privacy. How about that? And they fought this with tooth and nail. Here's another chair here, Mr. Aaron. You can get it. They fought it with tooth and nail. They brought in lobbyists. The university, a broke university, brought in lobbyists to argue with us why they should not release this information to the public. One of the state legislators got them last year to do a review of the tumor registry data. They came to a determination there was one group of people in the chemical corridor that had a significant problem. It was middle-aged white men.